Welcome, everyone. We'll bring an end to the longest 3 minutes of my week there and get us started. We appreciate you all joining today, our Power Hug session. My name is Scott Dwyer. I'm a technical specialist here at Microsoft, and along with my colleague Randall and Chelsea, we run this user group, this community, to help all of our Power Platform admins, makers, users in the healthcare space to hopefully learn and grow with one another. We are always here on the fourth Thursday of each month, with the occasional exception. We do have a session coming up that we bumped out just slightly to avoid a large Microsoft event, so you can focus on build and then hear from some exciting Microsoft pro devs the following week. We'd love to hear you as a presenter. We've got our next couple of months booked up that we'll talk through. I'll have Randall talk through, but we'd love to have you as a presenter about anything and everything Power Platform. Your experience, a great use case you had, a great challenge you overcame, the business value, like we're going to talk about today, how you achieved a big win for your organization, any and all things. You can always reach out to Randall and I. And we do have on the right there some feedback surveys. If you've got ideas for us, we'd like to hear about this. How can I learn more about that? We are all ears. And we also post our previous sessions on our YouTube channel. You can find that at Power Platform Hug on YouTube, and get caught up on all things Power Platform. We tend to hear from customers. We also have had some sessions from Microsoft experts as well. And then finally, we've got a community group or a forum on LinkedIn that we encourage you to join us on. Primarily right now, it's largely announcements about upcoming events and that Microsoft is putting on, including Power Hug and other forums. But if you ever have questions, Randall and I are monitoring that, and we'll be happy to kind of lean in and help you there, or help one another. So feel free to post on that group anytime, and we encourage you to join us there if you're a LinkedIn user. I'll go ahead and hand it off to Randall to talk about some upcoming events and introduce today's esteemed panel.
All right, thanks, Scott. We got some great events coming up. We're pretty excited about today, and quantifying the value of Power Platform. But we got some great events also coming up in the coming months. So next month, we're actually planning to hear from a healthcare provider, and they're going to talk about their journeying, it's easy for me to say, from Power Platform to 5-star distinction and a first foray into custom generative AI. And that's going to be a hand hygiene use case with some additional things that they're doing. And we're kind of prepping, hopefully, for them to come back again with some additional use cases in the future. And that's going to be brought to us by St. Luke's University Health Network, Andrew Walters and Kane Deely. And then we have May 29th, like Scott mentioned, we're delaying it 1 month or 1 week in May to accommodate Microsoft Build. But we're going to come back with an exciting topic about low code for pro devs, presented by Dave Milton, Director of Technical Specialists here at Microsoft, as well as Scott Duro, who's a Microsoft Senior Cloud Advocate and former Microsoft MVP. And you probably see him everywhere on YouTube and on the web, talking about all the great things you can do with Power Platform. So tune in to that. There'll be another great session. As I talked about, May 19th through the 22nd is Microsoft Build. You can do in-person or virtual attendance for that. A lot of great sessions for developers and Power Platform. We gear a lot of our announcements around new features that are either GA or coming into public preview around some of these bigger events, and Build is no exception. So pay attention to all the announcements that's going to happen. I can expect we're going to hear lots of great things around co-pilots and agents and how that impacts Power Platform as a result of Build. All right, next slide. And then we have another great event in another week or so, maybe a week and a half. April 8th, brought to us by Microsoft and Healthcare. We have this as a presentation by both a partner, Zenity, and Microsoft ourselves, in terms of Abhijit Premkumar and Liz Vilchis, who are both Microsoft experts, and Kayla Underkoffler from Zenity. So don't miss that. It'll be on April 8th. All right, next slide. And today we're going to dive into quantifying the value of Power Platform. Brought to us by Susan Elbin and Joshua Brown. Joshua being from Humana, Susan from Microsoft. And we're going to talk through some of the techniques and how you can quantify value, and then how someone like Humana or Josh put that into practice, and how they're approaching that, and the things that they're running into, as well as some of the things that they developed on their own. So great session coming up. We'll take all your questions in the chat, so feel free to put them there. We're probably going to reserve them till the end, so we give them as much time as possible to get through all the great material they have today. So drop them in the chat or the Q&A. Scott and I will moderate, and then we'll present those questions at the end. So with that, Susan, you want to kick it off?
Yep. Yeah. Let's see if it's going to work here. Here we go. Well, thanks everybody for coming today. So I'm going to dive directly and very quickly into the agenda. So the structure of this is going to be today. So I'm an economist at Microsoft. Microsoft started this group, the Business Value Management Group, about 10 years ago. They hired financial analysts and economists to begin to help, one, quantify for individual customers the value of implementing a technology, but also to begin to, over time, look at what's the economic impact of certain technologies that we're seeing over the years after it's evolved, and what specifically are the differences and the changes by industry that we see based on technology. So that's what I do. I'm very focused on the healthcare industry, verticals and subverticals. So the way we're going to structure this today is I'm going to go over how I approach both the top-down and bottom-up analysis, economic analysis, for implementing the Power Platform. And then we're going to move over to Josh, who's going to show you his detailed and example of how he's done it at Humana. And so I want you to pay really close attention to especially the governance and center of excellence components of his presentation, because I'm at the end of mine, I'm going to show you the difference between what having a structure like that Josh has put in place and not having one at all means in terms of the value to the organization and the number of apps that are developed. I'm going to be start with reviewing the Forrester Total Economic Impact Study, because I use this as a basis, and I'm going to show you what the results were, but also I'm going to overlay that with my experience and how close it is to reality we're seeing when they have a successful implementation. So why it's such a good framework for understanding economic value. So as we move into the TEI study, so the TEI study, it was a 7 different organizations, everybody from CIOs to product directors across several verticals. There are efficiencies across, or there are similarities across all the verticals that make it such a good framework for all industries. So for the healthcare industry, what we see are the same across all the industries is the way they do data management, how customer engagement is done, the impact of revenue growth, the impact of operational efficiencies from workflow automations and process automations, and then finally, the similarities in how they consider regulatory, address complex regulatory issues and from government, and also how much that might slow down or speed up. Usually it's slow down, but industry by industry. So this study has 4 major components. We're going to focus, I'm going to break down just the benefits, but it goes into the benefits, breaking down the revenue growth, cost implications, and the efficiency implications. But this study also talks about what's the cost of implementing it. We're not going to focus that on today. What's the flexibility? What's the strategic value gain from future investments and scaling? And then also risk adjustments. How do we risk adjust it, the variables based on that? So I recommend you read the entire study, but today I'm really just going to dig into the benefits of that. All right, so the benefits, like I said, break down into 3 specific categories: efficiencies, revenue increases, and cost reductions. The efficiencies are coming from an average time savings of 25% per impacted employee. So 25% for every employee with a license. So in the end, this equated to approximately 5% of all operating expenses over a 3-year period. And this is largely the efficiencies came from improving workflows and reducing manual work. The revenue increases came from accelerating time to market. So accelerating time to market for products, accelerating time to market for service, and of course, improved customer engagement. And so those applications or those workflows that they put in specifically to improve customer engagement had an overall impact in the 3 years of 0.2% of the total revenue. And then finally, cost reductions. And the cost reductions came from improved visibility, that having the data estate in order, as well as the applications and a focused prioritization of the backlog, citizen development, and then, of course, replacing legacy systems. So that amounted to 0.3% of the composite organization's total operating expense. And I want to say, too, the composite organization, and keep this in mind, was a $10 billion revenue with 30,000 customers. So that's important. I'm going to show you how to adjust that, or how I can help you adjust that to make it for the right size it for both your industry and for the revenue and employees that you've got. The cost reduction came largely from reducing technical debt, consolidating platforms, and then maintenance cost savings. So there were 3 different types of use cases that fell into the buckets. The high impact use cases that came from automating core business functions, billing, claims management. I'm going to be very focused on payers and providers in this as well, but know that there are others as well. Billing, scheduling, patient intake, incident reporting, claims management. The medium impact use cases came mostly from process efficiencies. They didn't impact major revenue or cost drivers, and they were about productivity, automation, and workflow streamlining. And then, of course, the citizen development use cases are largely about department level automations that were improving localized workflows. Moving back to the high impact use cases, it's 25% time savings minimum across, but also 60% of certain, when you're talking about billing or automation or claims processing, it's 60% of an employee's work. So these can be across the entire organization, 25%, or 60% of a major core function of organizations, time savings associated with that. Medium impact use cases was a larger percent. So by year 3, we had 53% of the workforce being affected by this, and at least 5% time savings of their work. And then as we move down to the composite organization, 10 billion, 30,000 employees, over 3 years, they developed 100 high impact use cases with an average value of 405,000 each. For medium impact, it was 400 apps with an average value of about 71,000. And the citizen development apps, it was 1,000 citizen development apps with just north of $12,000 value per each. So here's some examples of the high impact. So the high impact apps, like I said, were based on core functions like claims processing, billing automation, patient intake, fraud detection, staff scheduling. Those are the major ones. They're highly connected to the existing system. So whether it's an EMR, CRM, claims systems, or the financial systems, those are what are characterized by high impact applications. They're primarily developed by professional developers, but some of the workflows can be enhanced by citizen development for those localized versions of those workflows. They generally require strict adherence to the regulatory standards, so HIPAA and other compliance guidelines. The medium, when we get to medium impact, these are largely about improving departmental workflows like provider credentialing, HR processes, call center management, IT ticketing. They are developed by a mix of developers and citizen developers, and they're largely focused on improving process efficiencies and not direct revenue generation. And then, of course, as we move into citizen development, they're built by non-technical users, solving localized problems, not integrated with core systems, but used for internal productivity and workflow automation. But the point of these are really rapid deployment without IT involvement at all. Okay, and here's one that you can kind of use generally, as I've done many of these over the years. Almost always, that you find at least a 45% reduction in development time, even when over your existing workflow or automation tools. So that's something you can generally, when we talk about combining top down and bottom up, generally we can always use that 45% cost reduction, development time reduction associated with that. So for a high impact app, that's 81 days improvement in the development process. So when we talk about faster time to market for those things that are affecting customer engagement or revenue generation, that's quite a bit. That's many days faster time to market. And for the medium impact, so it's getting those efficiencies faster, about 54 days improvement. And then, of course, one thing that you will want to go in and look at is what applications are they replacing. So this is one benchmark where I would say, hey, let's go in and look specifically at what applications you could be replacing or are replacing. But the study tells us that we're getting anywhere from 40 to 80% improvement from previous automation and web development tools. And finally, lowering IT costs. So this is another one, a pretty stable benchmark that I've seen across all that I've done, is they're getting a 35% improvement in that maintenance cost reduction. The other benefits that generally are not quantified is a reduction in technical debt, streamlining IT processes, and then of course, platform consolidation. There's cost reduction there, generally unquantified, but it's something that they see. Okay, so I'm going to go into, we talked a little bit about what were the similarities across the industry, but there are times when I do reduce the study values by industry, and providers is one of them. So I'm going to kind of walk through what I do for providers, and in terms of reducing the number of applications, as well as reducing the value of the high impact, medium impact, and citizen development apps. So with the providers, they have relatively unique revenue models and some operational complexities and regulatory challenges that require some modification. So I typically reduce the number of applications by 15%, and then anywhere from 18 to 19% on the value of the of each use case. So scaling down the estimated impact to reflect the difference in the revenue models, factoring in additional potential regulatory changes that are slowing things down, and also a fewer number of developers that they have in there. So the number of applications I've reduced to reflect implementation timelines for that. So that's just an example of how I might reduce it if there are differences. So what I did here is I'm going to use our hospital, a $10 billion revenue hospital with 30,000 workforce, as our kind of benchmark use case after having adjusted it. So I've adjusted the number of applications and the value for the as it breaks down into time savings, operational cost reductions, and revenue increases for this large hospital. I'm going to walk through how I do a top-down approach for that. So what we start with essentially is we start with the industry TEI benchmark. So like I said, it's a $10 billion, 30K employees. And then I will adjust them for if I have something specific like a provider where they need to be adjusted down. So I will apply the scaling factor. So this is, hey, because we've got a $10 billion, 30K, I'll need to adjust it based on the size of the revenue of the revenue for the size and the size of the organization, the number of employees. I'll adjust down the value of each of those applications. The next thing I'll do is I'll adjust the number of applications, like you saw me do. But I will use the TEI estimates. And this is another thing that, as I have found to be consistent across all bespoke economic analysis that I've done, that generally 30% of the apps are developed in year one. If we're looking at the 3-year value, 35% in year 2 and 35% in year 3. Apply those, and then I'll just simply multiply the adjusted application count by the scaled financial value to do a top-down projection. So next I'm going to kind of show you how I do scaling. So scaling is not a one-to-one linear, let's call it a linear value. So for the smaller organizations, they actually tend to get slightly higher benefit because the workforce scaling and operational efficiencies generally don't decrease as the same rate of revenue. They actually increase. So sometimes you'll see a non-linear effect to the smaller organizations versus the larger organizations, and they have the opposite scaling issues. So I adjust those based on the size of the organization. And you can see this is a continuous spectrum, so I can do anything in between in terms of scaling down the value. I'll adjust the application by the size of the hospital. So you can see I've done the multiplication here based on the scaling factors. And then I'll scale down the total applications over 3 years and then multiply that by the number of applications to get me an overall value based on the size of the organization. So that gives me kind of a benchmark of, hey, how many applications do I think that I should be developing in terms of high impact, medium impact, citizen development? What's the value I should average value I'm likely seeing for those? And so what do I think is the total value as a benchmark that the application should be getting me? So the benefits, of course, is this is scalable and repeatable. It can give you a really quick high-level estimate. It gives you a look at what you should be achieving relative to other people in your vertical and other people who have implemented or other organizations that have implemented the Power Platform, and helps for high-level strategic decision-making. Should I do this? Should I increase the number of Power Apps licenses I have? Should I opt into more premium licenses so I can get more higher value applications? Things like that. So it's really good for that kind of decision making. And now I'm going to go down into my bottom-up approach. So this, again, think of this as this is the economist bottom-up approach. And what you're going to see is the practitioners when we move over into Josh's, the practitioners bottom-up approach. And you'll see how they're very similar in terms of the approach, but they are different. There's similarities and differences. The bottom-up approach provides, of course, a structured methodology. You're going use case by use case. What are the actual known use cases, or even the projected that I think that I know use cases I should be developing? How can I get down to specific efficiency gains for that? So the time savings for the people that were using that application, you're going to have that, as well as an estimate of the cost savings and revenue impact. So being able to, by application, estimate what the higher level KPI value is. So even if you don't know exactly what it is, so you're not looking retrospectively, what do I estimate is going on for the organization in that higher level KPI impact? And I'm going to show you an example, and that can be very, very important when you're talking to C-level people about ultimately what is going to be the effect of the organization beyond efficiencies. So the step-by-step process for this is you identify the use cases and provide a detailed explanation of what the use case or what the application is going to do. You write a description, you document the purpose of each, and you build the rationale based on the problem that it's going to solve. You identify who are the target users for this application. Is it just one group? Is it just billing? Is it just claims adjustment? Or is it going to be efficiencies across the organization, be different values for based on different groups of people? You calculate the time savings. So based on who it's affecting, how much time do we think it's going to save for them? And then you multiply that by the hourly rate to get you to an annual value. The next thing you do is identify, okay, ultimately, what do we think? What is a higher level KPI going to affect? When I improve claims processing, what is the cost reduction that's going to be associated with that? If I improve my marketing objectives by creating more visibility and predictiveness in that, how much am I going to increase my patient appointments or increase my close rate or lead generation? Estimated margin impact, quantifying what it's going to do in terms of revenue and cost. So quantifying those higher level KPIs. Then beginning to categorize those impact levels. And this is really important because though you may have an idea what's in your backlog now or what you want to build, sometimes it's hard to project what's going to go on in the future. And you need to get an idea about what might be the value of the high impact, medium impact, and citizen development that I can represent to the organization, that I can characterize by what we've done now to say what might happen in the future. So you calculate the average values, and then you determine the ramp timing. So the ramp timing, the other nice thing that this provides for you is an ability to kind of prioritize your backlog, like based on what's most valuable. So let's do this one first because the value to the organization is much higher. So it does have that added advantage of being able to prioritize based on what the values in the organization. Here's just a quick, very simplified view of what this looks like. So you are determining what are the number of users. So in billing automation, this is overly simplified. It's just those people doing billing. How much time is it saving them per day? The efficiency gain isn't as important, but sometimes it gives you a view if you're guessing and have to guess at those minutes per day, minutes per week, minute or month that it's saving. You multiply that by the hourly rate, and then you multiply that by 50% to get your efficiency. So we only do 50% because it's kind of a 50% recapture of time. They might be doing something else with their time. They might be getting coffee, going for a jog, improving their health, and then identifying the higher level KPI that we think that it's going to affect. So in the case of billing automation, revenue leakage, staff scheduling, labor cost optimization, and then patient referral, of course, patient throughput, increased patient revenue. The important thing in summing all of these up, and the value of doing this bottom up kind of thing, is that you can get a comprehensive understanding of the value across a number of applications. You can start to begin to look at what are my unique patterns of value so that I can calculate an average impact for the type of use case. It gives you a way to do customized financial projections and prioritize your IT backlog based on what's most valuable. And then kind of adding it up gets you what you think the estimated total value of the platform is based on known use cases, and then being able to project into the future based on what you don't know yet, what might happen. So here's a quick look at one I did for a bottom up. I'm not gonna go into it, but I think if you can see this, what I want to walk through here is how this is done. So what I've done here is I've looked at it. This is a very large hospital. So it was 60,000 employees, 121 thousand technicians, and $25 billion hospital. And we went through and did, I think it was 17, 18 different applications to get a general view of what was going on. But mostly what I want to point out here is what's important to capture. So the area affected, like, what is it going to affect? A detailed description. This is not a detailed description. I would recommend doing much more detailed description and identifying the problem that it's going to solve, but identifying the number of potential users that it's going to affect, and the anticipated time savings per day, and then the multiplication that gets us to that value for the time recapture. And what I've seen across many, many times doing these, people are always odd or even at very conservative estimates of efficiencies, what those efficiency time savings are, even at 50%. Identifying what's the connected data system, that gives you a clue into what are those green or high impact applications. Also will tell you, do I need a premium license for these? And how many people do I need to give premium licenses to based on who's going to be using that? And then identifying that higher level KPI that's going to be affected, and then quantifying that. I've done that on a different tab. That is I do have a template that I can share with you guys to show how we did it. I almost always help with those higher level KPI projections because I have a lot of information about what the APQ benchmarks are, as well as what I've seen across the various verticals and sub-verticals in terms of the value for those, to give a really reasonable but conservative estimate of what those higher level impacts are. And then, of course, those medium impacts, those tend to be like 5 to 10% of time savings, task time savings, and of course, productivity and citizen dev. And don't forget just those software replacement ones. So many times in a lot of these, the apps are also replacing software. So you want to make sure that you have quantified that. And then also, if it's important to show the difference between if I had to develop that app from a custom perspective, what are my IT time savings? So getting an average cost to build with the Power Platform and also estimating what the custom build time is gives you an estimate for the TCO cost of savings. And then finally, in that purple category for software replacement, these are things where you're already realizing the benefits, but you could realize software license cost reductions by replacing it with a Power App. So that's generally how I go about doing that. So what's the difference? It's probably obvious. The data source for the top-down approach is we're using benchmarks. We're using industry benchmarks, maybe adjusted in some cases, and the bottom-up is real data. The accuracy is estimated in the top-down. It's actually measured in the bottom-up approach. Scalability, it's much better for top-down to scale across. You can do many organizations or divisions at one time. And then, of course, with bottom-up, you get specific about the use cases. Top-down, best use case, early stage projections, but also if you're trying to validate what's going on with the numbers that you've done from a bottom-up analysis. And then using both methods together, you can say, well, I'm going to use my bottom-up approach, but I'm also going to kind of look at what the industry average value is so that I can project into the future the number of applications and the value of those applications so that I can blend that financial projection for my CFO to give them a really good idea about what's actually going on with the platform. And that is my last slide, and I'm going to hand over to Josh, who's going to show you how this works in practice.
Thanks, Susan. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. All right, hopefully we're green here.
Looks good.
Thanks, Randall. All right, well, let's go ahead and dive in. My name is Josh Brown. I am a product manager for Power Platform and Power BI here at Humana. I'll be sharing a little bit about how we've gone about tackling some of the challenges and opportunities that comes with Power Platform in an operational sense. As Susan just outlined, there's a couple of different approaches you may take as far as how you're tackling business value, or potentially both at the same time. Humana has taken more of a bottom-up approach. But to understand that, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of our journey of how we got to where we're at, so there's more context and seeing how all this kind of plays together at a strategic level. So to start, how did we get where we are today? Well, to do that, to know that, we got to understand where we came from. Like most organizations, our Power Platform journey has really evolved over the years. It really kind of started in this self-service area that I think a lot of organizations do start in. This means business teams are doing a lot of independent things. There may not be a lot of oversight or guidance or anything like that. Perks of that, a lot of creative stuff gets developed. The downside is, and especially in an industry like ours, which is highly regulated, there's not a lot of governance or oversight and understanding into what's being built. So over the last couple of years, we've moved to what I like to call governed innovation, right? Our whole point in our team is to support our customers within the business to solve business challenges and to do that in the most efficient way possible. And I'm a firm believer that Power Platform is a fantastic product to be able to do that. So that's kind of where we're at today. In the future, we're going to be looking at expanding to more of an enterprise look for the platform, and we'll be exposing other capabilities such as AI and further democratization. So this evolution wasn't really accidental. It was driven by our specific business needs as far as the platform is concerned, and a more intentional strategic approach to low-code development at large across Humana. So there were some things that kind of came up that dictated our move to make a change in posture. As I mentioned before, highly regulated, right? If we can't see it, we can't assess it, and that can introduce risk and potentially some fines and things like that that we really don't want to deal with them. Security oversight, extremely inconsistent, And a lot of knowledge was kind of siloed within the LOBs that were actually using the platform, not a lot of knowledge sharing between them. So we really lacked understanding into what was being built. And since we didn't know about it or know what it was doing, we couldn't effectively measure or communicate our business value of the Power Platform or even our overall investment in it to begin with. So this is a little bit of how we're driving innovation today. We developed a 3-part governance framework, and it kind of addresses all of the above that I previously mentioned. It consists of developer personas. This classifies some users based on their development needs and the capabilities. We have a solution criticality tiering model that categorizes the solutions that are being built based off of business impact, and then a low-code SDLC that guides the overall build, test, deploy cycle. The power of this particular framework comes in how these elements work together. We'll kind of walk through some of these elements, but essentially your persona dictates what you can build. Your solution tier determines the governance requirements and controls, and the SDLC provides the process to follow along the way. So let's take a quick look at how all these things kind of work in more detail. There are 3 development personas, citizen, business, and enterprise. Citizen development, it's that kind of that modern work story. Comes in E5 licensing. I'm doing stuff in Office products, SharePoint, Excel, Outlook, that sort of thing. Standard-based connectors. I'm probably pretty new for the platform, although we've all seen some pretty creative, awesome stuff built off of SharePoint. So that's that citizen development model. They're allowed to build tier 3 solutions, which is really kind of some small team-based like workloads, and not building anything that's overly critical. Business development is kind of that sweet spot. This is our core builder community within Humana. They get their own environments, they get premium licensing, and they have the ability to create more impactful solutions on the platform. But to do that, they need to follow our low-code SDLC. So there's a formal onboarding process and training, and we'll dive into just a snippet of that later. Enterprise development is kind of that pro-code story. We haven't bitten this off fully. We have some teams that are playing in the space, but we want our core strong before we expand to more of the pro code side. There are additional considerations when it comes down to governance around pro code or custom code in general. Requirements are much more stringent. So when you start to talk about blending a low code model with a very regulated pro code model, there's complexity. So we want to make sure our core model is strong first in business development before we start really pushing more of the pro code capabilities on the platform. The solution tiering model, this follows our enterprise-wide standard. It's kind of my go-to. If something's already in place, don't reinvent the wheel. Go find what's in place and try to mimic it as closely as possible so that all your systems and processes work together. So you can see here just a quick outline, right? Our tier 3 focuses more on non-core business processes. These are our team-based workloads. Tier 2 is more core business processes that can translate to departmental or cross-departmental solutions. Tier 1 is mission critical, and Tier 0 is core infrastructure. We aren't supporting Tier 1 and Tier 0 on the platform today. We're still maturing and putting in places the types of SLAs, products, integrations, and processes and players that we need to actually support Tier 1 and Tier 0 on the platform. So our primary focus is on Tier 2 and Tier 3 at this time. And then we have our SDLC. At the end of the day, low-code development is still software development, right? It's abstracted, and it can move a lot faster than traditional development, but there's still a bunch of best practices that we need to follow along the way. Challenge is the audience, right? Folks that may have never developed anything before. So you have to kind of teach them some things as you go. Not only product stuff or how the platform works at large, but how do you actually navigate a project lifecycle? So this particular SDLC mirrors our enterprise standard, which is our big boy SDLC for custom code per se. And then this kind of fits into it based off the audience that's consuming it and the products that are in use. Okay. And so the key thing I want to touch on here is it's in the concept phase. It's kind of all your requirements gathering and that sort of thing, and high level idea of how this is going to work. The design phase moves into more of exactly what it sounds like, designing. That last task in design is actually registering a solution with our team for approval. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but it's really key that we kind of hone in on that now, is that there is part of this model that plays directly into business value. Okay, so let's talk about that because that's really why you're here, the value and how we're actually going about this. All right, so it's a bit of an overload slide, but bear with me, okay? We have our customer journeys here, citizen development and business development. Okay, you can see there's a lot less going on in citizen development. Shared environments, kind of do what you need to do, right? We keep it a little bit of an oversight, but as long as you're not stepping too far out of bounds, there's not too much risk introduced. We're more focused on where our critical data is and the systems that are integrating with down in business development. Okay. All right, so there are a few things I want to point out as far as the business development customer journey is concerned. We onboard all of our teams so that we set expectations between them and us around who does what and is responsible for what, our processes, training, all that good stuff, so they get a good start on the product. Then we log them into a CRM. Platform's wonderful in a lot of ways. There's a challenge with aligning to organizational structure. You're provisioning infrastructure. You need a way to hold teams accountable that are doing it. So we built our own CRM, and that's built off the COE starter kit. So we have the telemetry and everything, inventory running underneath, and then our organizational stuff sits on top. Okay. There's a biz dev learning path. It's a little bit deeper than the citizen development learning path. And then to build solutions, they need to go follow our low-code SDLC model. There's some required approvals and things like that that they have to take care of before they even get to us. When they come to us, that solution registration piece inside of our CRM, they're going to tell us the challenge they're trying to solve, how they're going to go about solving it. They're going to give us a little bit of their design, the concept and things they're looking to build, the connectors involved. They're going to tell us a little bit about the business value. And we have some automated capabilities inside the tool to do that. And I'll show just a quick glimpse of that later. And then we also capture kind of the risk and compliance side of things. They get that approved. They go out to their business team environments, managed environments, they do their thing, build, test, deploy it, and then it ends up in our enterprise level reporting. So that's kind of the end-to-end look of how that overall process works. Now, I mentioned our CRM. We call it Power Platform Team Manager. Okay, and I mentioned before it sits on top of the COE starter kit. So this is aligning the environments, all the components in those environments to an organizational structure so that there's accountability. And to be quite honest, giving some pats on the back for the good things that are going on. It's hard to map anything across the organization if you don't know who's involved. There's a bunch of other things that go on inside of here. Yes, there's the CRM, but we also use it as premium support requests, which are quite different from some of our more standard citizen development type requests that we get. We have business team premium license management. They manage their own licenses out of our tenant pool. We have a kind of a construct in place to deal with that. And it kind of sets the tone for chargeback or anything like that we want to accomplish. I mentioned the COE starter kit and then view and manage compliance posture. They have all these, environments. They're doing all these things. There's governance controls supposed to be in place. Now, are they complying with them? Well, that's we are really looking at pushing more of a democratized administration model. PPAC can do a lot of great things, especially with all the new things the product team is introducing. But at the end of the day, we want to push this back on the business teams and saying, you're coming here to build awesome, cool things. It's going to drive a ton of value for your business. But to do that, you need to kind of do some housekeeping and work with us to do that. So that's kind of that piece. And the last piece, as far as this is concerned, is that register solutions for approval. Okay. Here's a quick look. Inside of that team manager, actually, I'll go back a slide real fast. I have a screenshot of it here. You can see the SDLC is built out as a BPF, a business process flow at the top of the record. Inside, about one screen back, is kind of the business team record itself and all that other cool features that I just explained there on the left. But this is a solution registration capability. And then here you see there's a business value tab. We're telling a couple different stories. One, why build on Power Platform is part of that. I'll go a little bit further into that in just a moment. How will the business process improve? And then tell us why you built the solution from a qualitative perspective. Business value is hard, especially when you're talking to folks that just want to go solve their problem and probably are technical and maybe not even understand the business domain as much as we would sometimes wish. So we initially rolled out kind of a V1 of this, was much more aggressive, and then we peeled it back a bit and abstracted away some of the things that we were asking to make it more of easily digestible so that we could get a pretty good idea of what they were doing and the impact it would have. Okay, so this is a quick breakout of that concept base. Before they even get to us for approvals, right? Not every, got to always make sure the juice is worth the squeeze at the end of the day. So you get your business challenge you're trying to solve, you go out there and you figure out how you're going to try to solve it at a high level. You understand what are the cost implications from a licensing point of view. Now, where's the value to support that? And that's kind of where this comes in. And so not only do we have the capabilities in Power Platform Team Manager that kind of gives that automated, calculated way to move forward, but we also are developing training guides and videos that support more of that kind of functional knowledge throughout all this. So every task within our SDLC teaches our teams how to do these things, from project management to requirements gathering to building a support model, all of that good stuff. Business value is a key part of that. All right, so where are we really focusing on today? Most of this is sitting in development savings, low code versus custom code versus COTS, process efficiency, right? Saving some time and effort, putting that back into the business, cost mitigation. This might be something like legacy infrastructure cost reductions or not buying something on the market. And then revenue impacts is something that we're now looking and try to incorporate. Revenue impacts is interesting because usually the quantitative amount is a lot harder or a lot higher than some of the others, right? Development savings, you may save 35 to 45% low code to custom code. That's fantastic, but that's a small number when compared to revenue impacts downstream, which could be potentially in the tens of millions, and that starts to raise executive eyebrows. So you need to make sure that you tell that story correctly. It's a lot easier to stomach, a $2 million savings in some area versus an $80 million savings in an area. Okay, all of that feeds into, so we have this Power Platform Team Manager app. It's part of our governance framework. Solutions are getting registered in it. And then once they're all approved, they come down to our enterprise level reporting. And I'll give you a couple quick looks, and I'll try to clean it up and remove anything that might be sensitive in nature. So this is our current look as of this morning. We have 16.2 million in projected business value. This is a fairly new process, so it's projected at the moment, and we're building out the process for actualization of that. We have a breakdown here, as you can see, of the different slices of the approved solutions of that projected business value. So you can see that we have a legacy solution cost reduction of 1.8 million. We have a procurement cost avoidance. We didn't go buy stuff off the market for 1.9 million. Our IT development cost savings. So if the business isn't doing it, IT is probably doing it, or we're paying it someone else, third party, to do it. We've saved around 140,000. And then the process efficiencies, we've had about 10.6 million, which is obviously our biggest slice of this pie. We have also the hour savings there. We try to show our pipeline of opportunities to kind of showcase what's coming in. We also kind of showcase our top impactful teams and our top impactful solutions within the enterprise. We have a couple of other views I'll fly through. I'm trying to give time for any kind of questions y'all may have. We have a solution registry here. And so this is all of our current registered solutions within the system, their projected business value, and their current approval status. Some things here, it highlights the owner. Who is actually the owner? One, it's a shout out. Two is, I want to go talk to this person. And it also shows the organizational leadership. Organizational leadership is kind of everything that makes this work. Without the executive sponsors within the LOBs, nothing really moves forward at the pace we want it to. So showcasing the different executives across the enterprise that are heavily investing in the space helps us help them, and in return helps us back. Okay. And then we have the solution deep dive here, and I've kind of blurred it out, so it's probably not overly helpful. But what the idea here is, we want to share the business challenges and how teams are approaching solving them across the enterprise. There's another column here that you can't see, but it shows the qualitative business value of what that solution brought for that team. The idea is that we're sharing these stories across the enterprise and seeing where there's similarities may exist. There's better collaboration and knowledge sharing across the LOBs that are probably on the same types of journeys. We want to break down those silos. So our value measurement here has kind of revealed something pretty interesting. Microsoft calls it something else, but I'm going to call it this, the famous Singer effect. You probably are thinking of one that I'm not going to say on this call, but generally speaking, like the music industry, we have a few solutions that are really, really famous, really big hitters, right? And then we got a lot of what we call like garage bands, right? This is the tail end of our solutions. Only 3% of our solutions, they generate 67% of the total business value. So there's a lot of fantastic things going on in the enterprise, but there's only a handful that are the really, really big heavy hitters. And so our goal at the end of the day is to take more of those garage bands and help them mature, train them, and help them evaluate their space so that we see more of those famous singers across the enterprise. Okay, so the future, what's next? I know we're running low on time. Immediate term. operationalizing, excuse me, is kind of key to everything. You're like, Josh, okay, cool. You got a really proactive process there. That's fantastic. But we all know users like to go do their own thing, right? If there's a corner they can cut, they're probably going to try to do it. I agree. So we're setting up monitoring capabilities to monitor production environments that's going to map deployed solutions down into prod, back to the registered solutions in our CRM. So we have eyes on and a registration of everything that's out there in the wild. Our goal, 100% registered solutions by the end of the year. Additionally, part of this is business value is great. At the end of the day, I want to tell the ROI of the investment in the platform. Budgets are finite. So we want to make sure that the budget we are spending is being maximized. And so that's that premium license activity monitoring. Well, I know the environments, I know the components, I know the stakeholders, and I have activity logs. And so we're bringing that all together to optimize the license assignments across the enterprise. Short term, we want to look at other value dimensions that we can expand on beyond the ones we're currently focusing on, and then continuing to expand our democratization of development. And then longer term, more as AI matures, we'll be getting into that space and evolve how our value measurement, how we're going to be approaching that, communicating that based off of the organizational objectives at the senior leader level. So that's kind of our long-term look. And with that, with a few minutes to spare, that's my presentation on how we're tackling the business value challenge at Humana.
And I'll add just one thing to Josh's presentation because I didn't get to my slide, but the difference in the way Josh has set this up and his team has set this up is that you'll get a 38% difference in economic value, and that you'll have anywhere up to sometimes 138% difference in the number of high impact applications that you're going to do. So that tiny wedge there that he saw that had 67%, you'll have up to 2-3 times difference in the number of applications you're developing when you put this kind of structure in.
I'd love to add on there. This has only been in place for a quarter, okay? And we have 90 solutions registered and almost 17 million in value. I can't share with you our level of investment, but let's just say it's making conversations with the executives a lot easier. Premium licensing starts to look a lot. I'm not selling this product from that perspective, by the way, on this call, but it becomes less of a sticking point when you actually have true data to back up your discussions around premium license. Really isn't that expensive when we talk about enterprise software. So just two little cents there.
Got I guess a question for you, Josh, and hindsight being 2020, and for those organizations that are looking to maybe start this process or maybe have started it but don't know really where to go. Looking back and based on where you are now, how would you recommend that someone get started with this process?
Yep. So we've made a lot of missteps along the way. I'll be the first to admit it. I think the first thing is identifying the problem, right? Is the problem you don't know what's out there? Why don't you know what's out there? Is it because it's not being closely managed? Is there not good processes? Is our business teams not doing what they're supposed to do? Is everybody in shared environments? It all kind of comes down to that initial governance piece that you can build off of, if this is the model that you want to take with the platform. We drew a line in the sand and we said, okay, no more. We're going to take some short-term hits, but we're going to come out of this a lot better in the end. Looking back, we should have taken a stronger look at organizational alignment from the get-go. Instead, we're having to do some reconfiguring. At the end of the day, you're trying to sell to the executives, right? Hey, this is a fantastic product to use. Great. But those executives are also the ones that you need to be able to escalate to when they get to have their cake, but they shouldn't be eating it too, in the sense that compliance with your policies and processes come with it. So build out that governance model first, find out what will work. Culture shifts are hard. Going from self-service to a governed model has been a challenge, and take it a piece at a time. Don't try to boil the ocean at once.
Great. I think for the most part we answered a lot of the questions in the chat. There were some initially on the TEI study, but I think we've got most of them covered. So Scott, you want to?
Yeah.
Oh, let me see if we got one more here. Okay. Yeah, Adiz, as far as demos and who you need help or how do you get help with that, I'll put you in contact with someone here at Microsoft as well as the account owner for your account, and they can certainly talk through that with you. So with that, Scott, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you especially to Josh and Susan for presenting. As a seller of this product, I love talking about the value of these things. I love even more that when we can bring in folks that have realized the value, that have seen the value. So Josh, a special thanks to you for coming in and telling your story. It really helps us a great deal, and I think it's an awesome topic. We'll be back. We're here the fourth Thursday, so don't miss us next month in April with the St. Luke's folks. If you're a LinkedIn person, we've got a group there, like I said, for a forum. Get in touch with Randall, Chelsea, and I. Connect. That's where we kind of advertise and post these things more proactively to help you get registered. And we'll have this session up on YouTube here shortly, where you can review it if you weren't able to see the entire thing or would like to revisit any of those sections that Susan and Josh talked about. Any other questions or feedback, you have some links on the bottom there, or you can always reach out to Randall, Chelsea, and I directly. Thank you all again for coming, and thank you one last time to Josh and Susan. This was fantastic, and everybody have a wonderful day.